Oh, the fictional Holocaust, the catharsis we feel when a people gets slaughtered. Whether that's the deep, pained rage that leads to revenge, the grieving of what was lost, the sorrow that's felt when anyone brings it up, the sight of everything burning, life burning, hope dying, everything fueling the nightmare, heroes rise to fall, to ascend again. Both sides lose people, archetypes develop, the survivors of the ordeal, the pained and the vengeful, the ones responsible, be they big or small, the bad actors who take way more pride in the violence. So many pieces just working together like Toy Story 3 toy box mode. The X-Men have seen bloodshed like it's their favorite movie. Genosha, Utopia, the bombings of the depowered students, acts of violence on acts of violence. It turns into a spectacle to see so much superpowered death. It's so common practice that it's a wonder that the Avengers or the Fantastic Four don't stick their noses in sooner, as a lot of mutant tragedy stays in its own book. Sometimes, however, the treatment is too brutal and the event too shocking to leave it just to one group, leading to the handy-dandy comic crossover. My first crossover story was Blackest Night, back when I started gaining longer memory for this comic stuff, understanding the different timelines and non-canons, the difference between adaptation and source material. Basically, I was finding out that comic history is a load of bupkis.
It's here today and gone tomorrow.
But the story arc helped me stay afloat. Stories that I could read that affected multiple characters so I wasn't bored or didn't have to know too much about anyone. Everything's connected, so if I'm lost, there's a place to go, and if I don't want to read the whole bop, I just don't have to. Because the siege of the Black Lanterns is something to behold, but why they're doing it or how they stop doing it is very much lackluster, so I choose to opt out in every other reading or so. The Mutant Massacre, a crossover story for the ages, a tale of mutant murder so chilling that 3 mutant books couldn't contain it, and thus the event spills over into the pages of Thor, Daredevil, and Power Pack. The story centers around the Morlocks, a group of mutants who fit even less into society and have taken to the underground for safety and community, when for literally no reason they are targeted for extermination. The Marauders, a super bully squad of assassins that are just another personification of the cruelty that mutants live in fear of and that the X-Men exist to stand against. The Marauders show zero mercy to their victims, maiming or killing any who stand in their way, the bravest, the boldest, and the most indestructible. The massacre part of the story cuts surprisingly deep for an older comic that doesn't have the bells and whistles of today. If this shit was made to look as good as mutant books do now, or even turned into a movie, it would be nightmarish. Imagine a blood-stained sewer filled with screams and cries of innocent outcasts who just wish to be left alone. We see bodies of the Morlocks all throughout the tale, lifeless, depressed, and indiscernible. Most of the locks killed here were created for this sick purge, with just a few having already been named and considered. Thor and the Power Pack have already had their own micro-encounters with some of the locks before the massacre, so their involvement comes with a sadder feeling of grief and guilt. If only the rest of the world could see the Morlocks the way that the mighty Thor or the adorable Power Pack, then maybe they wouldn't have to peacefully dwell beneath the streets where they've been targeted for annihilation, and Angel suffers an injury that quite literally changes him forever. The drama is quite actually bombastic, but Angel does get that whooping, like they real life crucify him. I jumped to this part because I love Angel, the simplicity of a man who can just fly and wants to save people because he can fly, even though it's this event that would transition him from guy with wings to the anomalous superpowered clusterfuck that all classic comic characters evolve into when he gets his wings harped and later amputated, only for Apocalypse to give him that horseman treatment. Serving X-Factor at the time, Angel, alone after the Marauders leave half of his team wounded, is searching for a lost mutant when he comes face to face with 3 of the Marauders who promise a beating for him in such tight spaces, in no way able to spread his wings and fly. He sends Artie to the team, making him promise not to turn back if he hears the howls and screams of this ass whooping he finna receive. Angel thinks he's gonna die here, and even still puts up a few seconds of a fight, whacking Vertigo's shit until Blockbuster and Harpoon pin him to a wall. In less than 10 panels, Blockbuster has his hands on Angel's wings. The speed at which they attack his wings feels so envious. Thor saves Angel before he gets that full crucifix, making this an L that spans 2 comics, if you can believe that. I don't know why Thor is here. Like, I skipped all the shit that has to do with him and got straight to the talking frogs that alert him to the massacre, because because for some reason his Mutant Massacre tie-in issue has a whole bunch of other shit in the front of it. Thor knows these frogs. They go way back, in fact. Presumably these frogs just so happen to find Thor at the time of the massacre. There's no way they could have or should have known he was there. But Thor stops what he's doing because of his former dealings with a Morlock, Piper, and finds himself knee-deep in some superhuman combat, stopping Harpoon and Blockbuster before they finish the job on Angel. Thor full-on saves Angel the first time after he takes him off the wall, and the second time when Blockbuster ambushes them shortly after the first fight. Thor would end up killing Buster though in the ensuing scuffle, proving that any Blockbuster that you can find is very, very expendable. Let's focus on the Marauders. We kill mutants, their point man states. Scalp Hunter, Harpoon, Blockbuster, Scrambler, Riptide, Arclight, Vertigo, Sabretooth, Prism, and Malice. The roster is a bit bloated, but I don't count Sabretooth because he's a bit bigger than the Marauders, and he's here for his story with Wolverine, which ends up weighing down the massacre, if anything. Prism and Malice don't even fucking participate. Prism tries to, but gets his shit wrecked, and then Malice is off trying to possess Dazzler for some reason, leaving Scalp, Harp, Block, Scram, Rip, Arc, and Vert. These are the massacre artists. Vertigo has the power to induce dizziness and unconsciousness. Arclight is a superwoman who can lift up to 50 tons and create shockwaves from her hands by striking things. Riptide is like Top from DC, not that kind of Top. While spinning at high speeds, he throws a type of shuriken made from a resin in his skin, because you can't just, bring shuriken from home. During the massacre, it was Riptide who was always able to kill the most Morlocks at one given time because of the tight spaces and high speeds of his ability, and the fragile bodies of the Morlocks. Scrambler is a young Korean man, which they found need to mention, who can disrupt and turn off meta abilities of all kinds. Blockbuster, no, not that one, is just some strong guy who gets the drop on Thor until Thor drops his casket, as it were. If Riptide was responsible for the most murders at any one time, Harpoon is the sniper, with energy charged rods that he flings indiscriminately. Harpoon is a great nuisance, killing or maiming anyone who's in his line of sight, with multiple people getting skewered, like Cybele, this fucking guy, and even legendary X-Men Kitty Pryde herself. Scalp Hunter, or John Greycrow, is their leader, kind of like Mutant Bloodsport. He puts together a myriad of weapons from his body armor and leads the charge for most of the massacre, cleaving locks like Delilah. That's raw, overwhelming firepower, a destructive force that can clear obstacles and is invulnerable to most damage, brute strength for the big guys and Colossus types, a flesh ripper who cuts half the field down instantly, a power disruptor for the especially disruptive, instant nausea and dizziness making it hard to fight even if you can, and then just two assassin types that love to kill. The Morlocks didn't stand a chance. The group isn't harmless by any means at this point in the history, and they have gotten spicy and feisty a few times, but in the face of the malicious Marauders, they are pigs to the slaughter. The devastation they face here hangs over the Locks forever, and though there is no shortage of mutant murder in all of Marveldom, this one event stands out because it happens for particularly no reason. There is a reason, and it sticks because the massacre is one of the few canon events left, but I'd be lying if I said the reason was anything but some political bum bouncing. The Age of Apocalypse, a timeline caused when Charles Xavier's son goes back in time to kill Magneto, gets his mutant overlords confused, I guess, and kills Charles instead, meaning that there was no one to truly stand in the way of Apocalypse when he came to claim Earth for mutant kind. The Dark Beast is a product of this timeline, if that's already convoluted enough, and is the result of Hank McCoy's work with Mr. Sinister, the most professional mutant interloper. The Age of Apoc would eventually collapse, and so Dark Beast fled to the main timeline and proceeded to get right back to his valuable work, experimenting with mutant genes. These experiments, or rather the failure of them, are what led to the original Morlocks. The Mr. Sinister of this timeline, recognizing his own work in the Morlocks and being a bit stingy, sends the Marauders to clean up this messy ass mess, also because he didn't want the ugliness of the Morlocks to end up in the mutant gene pool. In short, the Morlocks are murdered because their very existence was just a secret that Mr. Sinister didn't want out yet, making the Morlocks the butt of everyone's jokes all the time.
No, it's the Hot Rodders, agents of Big Daddy Sinister on a search and destroy mission against all muties, but especially those with minor or inconsequential roles. They're gone. Damage report Psylark. 127 muties and 14 Star Trek security guards dead, Storm and Drang. Maybe twice that many wounded? Anybody we know? Nope, all complete nobodies as far as I can tell. Their usual pattern. What's next? Well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a strange disturbance. As if millions cried out in fear and were suddenly silenced?
And so that's the Mutant Massacre, or at least the mutant and the massacre part. There's a lot that happens during the massacre that means something to the X-Men and Thor stories outside of it, but because none of that shit matters today, it doesn't matter to me. After saving Angel, Thor manages to meet up with X-Factor, who take Angel and the handful of Locks they were able to save to the surface while he gives the dead Locks a Viking's funeral. With a mighty blow to the ground, Thor curses the goddess of death and fire envelops the sewer, washing away any remnant of the bloodshed and agony that the corpses can no longer feel or play witness to. This leads to my favorite part of the whole crossover, when Callisto, the big Morlock, goes back down to the sewer to see that the fire has wiped clean anything that would prove the Marauders, the Massacre, or even the Morlocks themselves ever existed. Not a corpse, not a bloodstain, not even a keepsake. All of the alley, the entirety of the tunnels where hundreds of peaceful, ugly mutants used to dwell, now completely empty, with no signs of life whatsoever. Callisto puts this Morlock shit on her back. A founding member, champion of the underground, where there are Morlocks, there is Callisto. And after being forced to leave her home in the wake of a Holocaust, Callisto comes back down to her once thriving community to find nothing. Nothing to track down the Marauders, nothing to clean up, and nothing to remember anyone by. Knowing that she's the only one who will ever really care about the Morlocks makes this moment that much more wrenching. Seeing Thor torch the sewer at first felt like the respectful thing to do, until I considered Callisto's pain, not considering the fact that she might like a say-so in her brethren's burial rites, when she's the only one who cared about their existence to begin with, and if nothing else she would have preserved at least some memories first. It's the same pain felt when Caliban awakes from unconsciousness to find no trace of his mutant family anywhere in the sewer. His ability to detect mutants that once got a read on hundreds of mutant signatures reduced to just the small group that was rescuing him. The surface world treated the Morlocks with so little comfort that they struggled to find alliance with even other mutants. Forced to the sewer for a sense of safety and society, the Morlocks do a good job of finding home in each other. That is, until a gang of goose steppers pull up icing shit for reasons that might not even be canon anymore. I cry for the Morlocks because of what their fictional demises say about prejudice. Mutants already have it terrible, and somehow these guys manage to have it worse. The Morlocks, for the most part, are minding their own business when their own kind comes down there with the illest of intentions simply because they were told to. Their mutant champions, the X-Men, are powerless to save them. They try to fight back to no avail, and any slim chances of rallying behind this grim tragedy is removed with no bodies to mourn or get outraged about. The Krakoan age has completely changed the landscape of the X-Men. With the power of resurrection and an actual sovereign nation to call their own, mutants have banded much more together and solved a big bulk of the problems that led to stuff like the Mutant Massacre, House of M, Genosha, with hero and villain mutants alike being welcomed if they follow the rules. Scalp Hunter would be one of the many brought back to life to the jargon of some of the also resurrected Morlocks. Seeing Cybele and Tommy back in modern color, clean of all of the muck and depression of the sewer, was warming. Even more so was the idea of someone like John Greycrow getting any kind of redemption. He shows a bit of mercy on the Locks in his new life. After finding him on the beach, a handful of them that remember the massacre try to jump him, and though he only defends himself, he doesn't make it clear to the council who attacked who first, choosing to just take his lumps and to leave the Morlocks alone. Today, aside from the Morlocks on Krakoa, the Mutant Massacre has been woefully forgotten. The Morlocks never really escaped the history of this event until Krakoa, and with the fall of X rebranding the failed Gala as the new Massacre, safe to say that the Morlock version can be put to rest. At some point before all of this, the Morlocks would suffer another massacre at the hands of the Marauders again, but this time is off screen, and when confronted about it, the Marauders act like they don't know what's up. Sinister has been cloning the OG Marauders ever since their inception, so this fashion-informed group might be innocent for real. It doesn't really get resolved anyway, not like it would matter with the 5 on the line. The small glimpse of the massacre that we get in modern times really makes me wish for a modern telling of the OG story. Same old thing with just new art and new covers. I didn't really find a reason to talk about the Power Pack or Daredevil tie-in. I'm gonna talk about the Daredevil one in in a separate video, and the Power Pack one was kind of buns. The team battle the Rotters, Arclight and Scrambler, are pretty cool to see, but they spend so much time on Sabretooth and Wolverine and X-Factor, which we already get plenty of, that I choose just to skim it for the things that I care about, which apparently seems to be mutant murder.
It's gonna take a bit of work.